the suspension bridge, which is up here, these ones are 50 hours. So the slides, you have grease nipples on the top, the bottom, the front, and the back for the axle slides. If you don't use the axle slides a lot, if you just leave them in one position all the time, then don't grease it. It says 50 hours, but only 50 hours if you're using it all the time. If you leave it all the way in or all the way out, then no grease. It is important on these slides, if you are moving them in and out quite frequently, make sure there's no dirt on top. So before you suck them back in, there should be no mud sitting on top because it'll wear out those slides. I haven't replaced them yet on our sprayer, but the previous brands, lots. So hopefully, the grease nipples are working and we're getting all that mud moving in and out, but if you always knock them off with a brush or a stick, then you won't have any issues. So there's 4 of these for the steering kingpins. One faces forward, the other one faces backwards, but 1 per corner. And they're 50 hours.
Just a suggestion. I'm short and they're hard to see. If you could put a little extension on there so they're more visible, I gotta look and try to feel my way to find them.
It's a good idea. They should make them a different color too.
Yeah.
Or circle them with paint or something, right?
The new one has auto greasing, so that'll be won't be a problem.
Did you order the auto grease?
Don't they have auto greasing now?
They do. So it is an option on the new orders for next season. You can get an auto greaser on it. It's expensive, but you don't have to every 50 hours go out and grease all these grease points. So there's 25 grease points on the center rack that have to be done every 50 hours. So you have to unfold the booms, and you do it when the boom is all the way down in the low position. And here's where they are. This is all in the manual too, but I've made it all on 4 pages here, so you know where all the grease points are the first time you do it, right?
How many pumps per grease point?
Couple. Like some of them you really can't over grease, but on these ones here on the center frame, I'd say a couple pumps per grease nipple. I have been to sprayers where they're completely dry with no grease, and those bushings inside do wear out if they're not greased. So make sure they are. There's a couple more in on that 50-hour interval on the center. And then we have 1 grease bank right here. These ones up here from the top, you can't reach from the ground. So Joe, there's no way you'd be able to reach those ones. So that's why those 4 are on the bank. I see this quite a bit. The breakaway is over greased. So if you're not hitting things with your breakaway, don't grease it, right? It only needs a little bit on there just so it's not metal on metal. But when you're greasing the center rack, I know in the book it says it's a 50-hour interval, but don't go grease the breakaway on the outside. Because if there's too much grease on there, it just breaks away way too easy. And when you make a sharp turn with your 4-wheel steering on, then your breakaway engages. So we don't want that. Everybody was checking the oil every day last year, right?
You can find dipstick.
So this is they call it a technical information from Horsch, which is a new dipstick location. So it's a part number and you can install it. The fix rate, what they tell me is if the farmers complain about it, then install this kit. So if you go to genAG and complain about this part, then they'll get you the new dipstick set up. So make sure you get this because it's way better. It's silver. So to check your oil now, you will open up this cover right behind the cab, and the dipstick will be right beside. So way better location to check the oil. So Auto Select Pro is a new option for this year. This one isn't free, so it is an option that you got to pay for, but it's a software upgrade. So what it does is allow you to have turn compensation on an auto select machine. So it'll put on your smallest nozzles. In this case, it's an O2 yellow nozzle on the inside of your turn, and it'll turn on possibly all 6 of your nozzles on the outside of the turn if you're turning sharp enough. So
I thought I had that.
if you have it, then it'll work.
I have that, Dennis.
Yeah, if the button is there in your monitor, then you already have it.
I can't say for sure if it is.
I'll show you where it is. So if you have Auto Select Pro installed, if you look at the other screen there, if you go to this button right here, there'll be a button right here on this square that shows you basically a picture of an A with a turn.
I don't think that's there.
So then you don't have it. This sprayer that we're hooked up to right now, which is this one, doesn't have it, right? Because there's nothing in that box. But I think, Marv, at your place, we tried it last year. Did it work? Yeah, okay.
We just shut ours off.
We had a bit of a glitch on that pre-series test model, so we didn't use it on yours. So we wrote the English explanation for all of the symbols in the monitor. You won't have this in your book, I don't think. I added this here kind of last minute, but this is important if you don't have them memorized, right? So it's actually telling you what all those symbols mean. So, pull this sheet out, keep this book with you in the cab, right? So if you don't know what any of these symbols mean, you can always go back to this and take a look, right? We also did the same thing for the side monitor. So this is for the side fill station. We have the same English explanations. So I think, Derek, you were getting some stickers made in the past. Yeah, so the stickers show you this PDF, but okay. You were talking this one right here? Yeah.
It's just one sheet that we laminated to put beside the cab.
Yeah. But you're printing it off and doing it, right? Good. Good, good. So the reason why we do this, these sprayers get sold all around the world, right? So instead of just having, the letters there in English, they have to have the symbols so anybody who speaks any language can run the machine. All right, this looks kind of complicated, but this is our plumbing system. We've done a few changes to this document since last year. We kind of showed the same document last year, so this will be a bit of a refresher from anybody who saw it then. But I'll go over our water system now and how the water system all works. So if I want to fill from the front, it's very simple. All I'm going to do is open that big yellow handle valve and pump in with my transfer pump onto the sprayer. There's no electronic valves you have to open. You're just going to watch your gauge here. If you have the key on, then you'll see in yellow up there the tank level. So no electronic valves on the front fill unless you modify the sprayer to work like that. And we have had some farms do that. It's showing a picture of a pump here. This is an option, so if you want to suck in with your front fill, you can. But the majority of the sprayers, I think we've only ever had one in Manitoba that has that front fill pump. All right, if you want to side fill, you have to use the electronic valves to do it. So you're going to open this black handle valve right here on the 3-inch line. On the side fill station monitor, you're gonna hit the external fill button right here. It's gonna open valve number 11, which is your tank sump, and your target fill valve, which is number 11. So it opens up 2 valves. Show of hands, who had a Chem inductor last year? Who's using one? Anyone? You got one? Okay. Two Chem inductors. Did you guys use it? Okay. Freshwater fill is from the side. It's a 1-inch line from factory. When they get this, they modify it, right? So they're modifying it to either a 2-inch line or a 3-inch line. There's one thing you have to keep in mind if you modify this freshwater fill is that it has to be vented. So when you're filling those tanks, if there's no vent, then the pump can't suck out either, and it can't empty the freshwater tanks once you fill them. So if you are pumping in through the vent line, like we've recommended in the past, we have to make sure we drill some holes in the lids to make sure they're still vented, right? When we do a clean out, it wouldn't be able to suck fresh water out with our main product pump without a vent. Okay, if we want to suck water in with that side fill, we're going to hit this button right here, the picture of the pump with the water coming in. The water doesn't come in through number 11 anymore. There's 2 holes in the bottom of your tank and 1 hole up here on the side for your front fill. So when you're sucking in, it's actually going in through the suction quick fill hole in the bottom of the tank instead of the main fill. So this pump right here is also our cleaning pump, but it has a second function. It's mainly just for making sure your tank is clean with fresh water, but it also primes your main pump. If this pump here reads below 6 psi, this second pump will cut in and suck all the air out of your system. So as soon as this pump is 6 psi, this other pump cuts out, this air line closes, and then it goes back to sucking in from the second hole in the back of the tank. So what this is used for is if you're sucking out of a well or sucking out of a dugout or anything with an empty hose, right? You're able to suck all the air out of that hose first, and then the main pump kicks in. So here's the plumbing for our Chem inductor. So after you're done filling through that Chem inductor, if you want to rinse it, right, and you want to wash it with fresh water, it would have been sucking out of either the main tank if you hit the pump button, or out of number 12 if you didn't hit the pump button. If you want to wash with fresh water though, you're going to hit the over button at the bottom here, and then you're going to see the picture of the fresh water tank. And then the main product pump is going to suck fresh water out of this tank instead of whatever was in your main tank. So you can rinse your Chem inductor after you fill with fresh water. So here's our agitation. The agitation is done through water valve number 9. It's a proportional valve, so it opens up to 3 different levels. So I can hit this button 3 times and I get 3 different PSI levels for my fill, my agitation. Very rare that I'd ever open it up all the way. Did you guys ever use it? Or no, max agitation? Never? So keep in mind this machine has recirculating booms and 2 sets of recirculating filters which cause a lot of agitation as well, right? So if I'm mixing, hot chemical into my tank and I don't want that chemical to go out into my booms and possibly not get mixed up, I would come out to my side fill station and I would hit this button. What this means is water valve number 9 opens.
We're dead on batteries here, maybe.
Might be a good time for a break. You guys want a coffee? Let's do a break. We'll come back in 5-10 minutes.
So here are 6 different nozzle sizes that we selected. And here we just choose our droplet size. The larger, if we do 5 squares, it's going to be the largest droplet size, or we less. And all it does is it changes when they go on.
So you got to program it in, and that's what it is.
And that's what it will do, yeah.
Yeah.
If you have different chemicals and you want to make a different profile for it, you can. Yeah, and it's very easy to do.
I always say that how it works, but I didn't know you had it in this sprayer.
Yeah. That's actually, it's
He started to, you know, I think he's $2 that salesman, eh?
well, there's some value to that, right? Being closer to your crop. I mean,
Sure.
talk to some of the guys here, they all say
So
that.
it would set the boom, set your nozzles. First you select your nozzle, and then it would keep your boom at, let's say I want my boom at 20 or 22. That's what it'll keep it at.
Ideally, we would like to run lower than that.
See, we got a John Deere, and we set it, as of now, we try to keep above the canopy. But every time I gotta remind them, let's say we're doing fungicide, I gotta remind, you're too low. What does it do when the crop is at fungicide season?
Have you learned?
How does it sense to keep your boom?
Well, we do not have to change if it's black dirt or if you're canopy, nothing. It can see that.
Okay.
Those sensors work quite well, and we also have contouring, which in your area probably doesn't affect it quite as much.
No.
But
All right, we'll finish going through the water system here, and then we'll cover the monitor, and then grab some dinner. And so we left off on the agitation with the 4 different levels. Your max agitation button, if you hit this guy, open it up to all 3. Or this button right here, so number 15 is your maximum agitation. So that'll open up the back entry into the tank. So when you're out spraying, if you turn your pump on right here, that means your booms start recirculating. So whatever chemical is in your main tank starts recirculating through your booms, through your pressure filters, and back in through the top of the tank. If I turn on my pump, and also turn on the master switch, that means my booms are not recirculating and my filters are also not recirculating. The filter on the back rack is not controlled electronically. So it's a manual control filter. So it's always recirculating if you leave that valve open. So if you're having foam inside the tank, the first thing you're gonna do is turn off this valve right here to this filter. So there's a yellow valve on the back rack, and it stops the tank from foaming up. If you want to do extremely high, either rate or speed for liquid fertilizer, you would close that valve as well. So close the valve, and also some guys are taking the filters right out for liquid fertilizer to do extremely high rate.
that's the middle one or the big one?
The pressure filters, so the 80 mesh. The valve is the small valve on the back rack, is the one that leads to the bottom of your pressure filter. So if you're foaming up, close that valve. So this is what it looks like when your booms are recirculating. So pressure is coming out from your pump through water valve number 3, back out through the booms. You're getting pressure at the center, going out through your nozzles and back towards the ends. When you're spraying, you're getting pressure from the center, but you're also getting pressure through water valve number 2 to the tips. So you're getting pressure from the center rack and also return lines at the same time. So you should have the same pressure on the center rack as you have on your tips. There shouldn't be any pressure drop. So that's our recirculation. The recirculating line inside the tank, you can't see it when you open the lid because there's a baffle in the way. But there's a red hose in the back of that tank that reaches 3/4 of the way down the tank. So what that's for is to limit the amount of foam. So when I'm in my last, 500 gallons inside the tank and the booms are recirculating on my headland, I don't want that chemical, dropping in and causing a lot of foam. So this hose goes 3/4 of the way down the back of the tank. So this is showing us the back flush of those two pressure filters. So this filter here at the side fill station is controlled by water valve number 5, which is electronic. This one we were just talking about is controlled manually right here. So you can completely close it off if you want, but keep in mind it will always back flush unless you close that valve. And I think, Joe, we fixed a flow issue once on yours by closing that valve. So for the guys running PWM,
Close it halfway.
we closed it halfway, so it was almost like a flow restrictor. There's some more pictures of it. So I want you guys to all do this every night when you're done spraying. So what this is going to do is extend the life of your solenoids, but also extend the diaphragms in your auto select system inside those nozzle bodies. So what you're going to do is hit the rinse button off the main page, and then hit the boom rinse button. What this does is the tank sump is closed, right? Because water valve number 11 didn't open. The main product pump is going to suck through water valve number 1. It's going to suck rinse water out. It's going to push the rinse water backwards through all your filters into the boom from the center and then back into the tank on the return line. What that does is it replaces all the chemical that was in your boom, pushes it all into the main tank, and leaves fresh water in your boom. That's the first step. The second step, right here, so you can see right here, it's opening up the agitation valve at the same time and pushing it backwards. But if you don't have your section control turned off, and if you don't have a self-test speed entered, it's going to leave just fresh water in that boom and not spray it out. So you either have to be driving forward with your master switch on, or if you're sitting still, you have to enter a self-test speed, and then it'll get rid of that clean water instead of just recirculating it next time you turn your pump on, so you don't dilute your system. Make sense? And you guys were all using this feature last year? Good.
So that'll spray it out too? That doesn't just put it back in the tank?
Correct. So when you hit this button, it'll also ask you to turn your master switch on, right? So make sure your master switch is on and you're driving forward slightly, and it'll spray out for, I think it's like 2.5 or 5 seconds, and get rid of all that fresh water that's in your boom.
Versus diluting your product.
Exactly. So if you don't do that last part of the step, which is spray it out, the next time you turn your sprayer on, you're going to turn your pump on, all that clean water now that's in your boom will just get returned to the main tank when the boom recirculates. So if you don't want to dilute it, so say if I stop with half a tank of fungicide on,
It doesn't really matter.
if you're right empty, it doesn't matter. You don't have to spray it out, but I do like spraying it out because that's not actually cleaning the chemical out of your diaphragms or your solenoids and replacing it with fresh water.
Will it open up all of them?
Yes.
Notice them?
Opens up all 6. So here's the washing program. When I'm doing a clean out, I'll run you through, I guess, how I do a clean out when I'm using the sprayer at home. First thing, of a good clean out, you have to make sure the right amount of chemical on your last load before you change products. So if I only need, another 40 acres or at 10 gallons, I only need 400 gallons of water, I'll make sure I don't mix up 450 and I'm wasting 50 gallons of chemical, right? So try to get the right amount on your last load. The next thing I'll do is, after the pump loses pressure, your booms are all still full of hot chemical, your plumbing system's all still full of hot chemical. So you can do an air blowout, and it's going to push that chemical backwards and open up your nozzles at the same time. So we're trying to push all of that chemical out. The problem is when you do an air blowout, water valve number 2, right here, also opens. So as chemical is getting pushed out of your booms, it's also returning chemical from your return line back to the main tank. So if you do an air blowout, make sure you dump the tank after, because you probably returned, 7-8 gallons of chemical back to the main tank. So before you add any rinse water in, let's dump that out. So that's waste. You could spray it out as well, but before I add any rinse water to the system, I want to make sure all of the hot chemical is out first. So after I get all of the chemical out of the sprayer, the next thing I'll do is I'll add a bit of fresh water in. So I'll probably add maybe 40 gallons of fresh water from my rinse tank into my main tank. And then I'll dump some flush all clear into the main tank at the same time. And if I'm transporting a long ways, I'll fold my booms up, and the whole time I'm transporting, I'll be using the washing programs. The booms will be recirculating, the filters, the agitation, and the rinse nozzles will be activated the whole time. Each cycle through this wash program is 3 minutes. So if you run it for 9 minutes, that means it's cleaned out the whole system 3 times.
It just keeps going.
It'll go forever. So until you hit the power button right here, that's when it stops. The only other thing that could stop it is if it gets below, the ability for that pump to hold pressure. It'll automatically turn the pump off then. So if you foam it up so much with that 40 gallons, that it's basically 40 gallons of foam, then the pump will turn off. One thing to mention is the Chem inductor does not clean itself. It's not automatic, right? So during that washing program, you would have to activate the valve to the Chem inductor and manually open those 4 valves to clean it out. If you clean your Chem inductor every time you fill, then this isn't a problem. But if you don't, then you have to clean it out every time.
So Mike, real quickly to show how you put clean water into your tank.
Sure. If I have that screen. Oh, you can do it on here actually, this is easier.
I'm just wondering what valve.
Yeah. So if I want to put clean water into my tank, you can do it from the rinse page right here. And this symbol right here is the small tank going into the big tank. But if I go into here, it gives me this weird function of dilution, right? Where I can dilute whatever's in my main tank 1-to-1 or all the way down to 1-to-4. I don't like using this. I like putting a set amount of water into my main tank, right? And I just turn it off when I'm happy with how much is in there. So to do that, I'll hit the back arrow one more time. So just to add rinse water into my main tank, I'll hit my tanks up here at the top. And I'll hit this button right here. So you can hear the valves open on the machine. It turns off right away because there's 0 pressure on the pump and my tank is reading 0 for my rinse tank. So when you hit this, what happens is my main product pump is not sucking dirty water out of my tank. It's sucking clean water out of my rinse tank and going back up through my rinse nozzles. No, not through the boom. So I'll show you where that is on the schematic, which is, oops. So go back to my main one. So if I suck fresh water out, so you follow your fresh water line down, right? Comes around through water valve number 1, but water valve number 11 is still closed. And then it would come out of the pump into the manifold and then in through the rinse, which is the red one, so water valve number 4, and then through there. Exactly. If you wanted to, it would take like a software change to put it in through the booms and then recirculate. But it goes in through the rinse nozzle. Only the rinse nozzle. Is that how you want it?
I just wanted to know where it was going.
Okay. That's kind of why we're covering this, because there is nowhere on the software where it really shows you what valves are opening and where the water is going right now. So we're going to try to change that in the future, where you can run any of these water valves manually on like a manual rinse page. But it's mostly for diagnosis and service, right? But it's nice to have. Okay. Where'd we leave off here? Okay, so the continuous rinse is the best part of the clean out on the sprayer. If all you want to do is continuous rinse, I would go to, I can show you on this page here too. I'd go to my rinse, then go to automatic, and I would uncheck all of these boxes. If I uncheck all these boxes, all it's going to do is just continuous rinse. So I could take the full 200 gallons and rinse out the machine with that. The only thing it doesn't do, right, is your agitation, your filter return lines, and your recirculation lines off the boom. So make sure you do the washing program first, if that's what you're going to do. But this is what the plumbing does when you're on continuous rinse. And it shows you how it works there. The automatic cleaning opens every electronic water valve except the Chem inductor. So again, there's manual valves on that Chem inductor. You have to make sure you clean those manually. So all you have to do is hit the power button on the right-hand side here. It's giving me a warning that there's not enough fresh water, so I can't do a clean out right now. But it goes through all the steps. So the very first step here, it's going to take about 20-25 gallons of water and rinse your boom out first and recirculate. Then it rinses out the suction quick fill valve. If you have this guy checked off right here, then it's going to ask if your Chem inductor is rinsed out. So if it's not, if you don't have a Chem inductor installed, usually what I would do is just uncheck the Chem inductor like this. On the new version of software that you're going to get, if you don't have a Chem inductor installed on your sprayer, you won't have this button here anymore. So you won't have to uncheck it, and it won't stop at that step on the new software, which is nice.
Is there anything, would they ever come out with a pause and continue? Because you have to empty out every time. Sometimes you're left with like 50 gallons, and it won't allow you to do it, but you already have that much water in your tank, but you can't continue. You have to start over to see if you drain your tank.
Yeah.
Would there be a pause and continue option ever?
That's the whole reason kind of for that manual rinse page
Oh yeah.
that I was talking about. So if you had that, right, then you could just start and open any water valve,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't matter for this automatic. So right now with the automatic cleaning, there's a bunch of parameters that have to be met, right? Each pressure sensor has to be at the right level, and each tank level has to be at the right level for you to start the automatic cleaning. But if you don't understand how it works and you hit the button, it doesn't let you, then you're in trouble. So to do automatic cleaning, your main tank has to be completely empty, and you have to have at least 50, 60 gallons in your rinse tank to start it. But these first steps here are all going to take probably about 40 gallons of water. Is that what you guys found last year? About that much, roughly. So it leaves you with 160 left. So when you get to this step right here, where the blue triangles are coming out of the booms, what that means is there's chemical coming out. So number one, your booms have to be unfolded, right? You can't be driving down the road while you do this. And you have to either be moving, or you have to have a self-test speed in. So the higher the self-test speed you put in there, the faster the sprayer will clean itself out. So I always enter 20 miles an hour on my self-test speed. And you also have to turn on your master switch. You turn on the master switch, then chemical starts coming out. As soon as this tank is empty again at this step, that's when the continuous rinse starts right here.
It starts it over again.
Well, it doesn't do this part, so it's not going to recirculate the booms, right? Because when you're doing a continuous rinse, there's no water returning to the tank because that water's dirty already. So these steps all up here, what they're for is to rinse out all of the steps in the sprayer that return water to the tank. So basically your agitation, your suction quick fill valve, and your 3 return lines, right? Because when I'm doing the continuous rinse, I don't want any dirty water coming back and contaminating the tank again. So instead of deadheading all those lines, they rinse them first and then close the valves. So the last step is only this right here, where water's coming out of my freshwater tank, through my cleaning pump, right, into the main tank, and then out through the nozzles. So my return lines don't get rinsed during the continuous rinse, they have to be cleaned first. Make sense?
So if you wanted to clean them out again, you don't check the last box, and you start that over again.
Correct. Or I could do a boom rinse, and then it just does the return lines, right? So the boom rinse is this guy right here. So I would hit this button, and this one just rinses out the boom and my return lines, right? Or you could go to the washing program, which is number 3, and that does everything.
On that boom rinse, it'd almost be nice if you could go from, is it 40, 30 or 40, it's 30 gallons, right?
Depends on your boom width.
Right, yes, I would.
So
We'd
they,
like to do a little more, something, quite often do twice, yeah, so 60 gallons instead.
there'll be a parameter in the back end of the software. I'll find that for you, because the way the software works, based on the boom width, there'll be a certain amount of liters it sucks out of that rinse tank before it turns off the pump, right? And asks you to turn on the nozzles to spray it out. So I'll find that parameter for you. Remind me.
Is it by time or gallon?
By liters.
Liters,
Yeah. Liters showing in your rinse tank is what it's going to go on, right? Any questions about the plumbing system? All good there?
The pressure on the inductor. for
Yes.
Washing out the jugs,
Yes.
is it changed now?
Yes. So this software update I'm talking about, that changes the boom folding and all that stuff. One of the things that changes is it doesn't reset on key cycle then your chem handler pressure. But I did figure out on the back end what the default number was as well, which was 10 bar. Right. Too high. So what pressure do you want the chem inductor running at?
Between 4 and 5, I would say.
How much?
4 to 5 bar.
Okay. So yeah, there is some good updates in that software update we need to do. So, any other questions? The plumbing system? Nothing?
So like, you guys gotta add more water to do a proper cleaning, like 200 gallons won't be enough to do it all. Unless you're doing Liberty, you can't clean it at 200 gallons.
You guys clean it 200 gallons? Yeah. I see some heads nodding.
Liberty.
Yeah. Yeah,
And washing systems make sure that
it is.
Because I'm used to with our rogator, I used to just do like 3 times finish, let it all out.
Yeah.
Took a while.
just doesn't fold mostly.
Well, just, yeah, not always, but just to make sure it's good. I just didn't trust it.
Well, there's no metric to know when a sprayer is cleaned out, right? You don't really know other than just how much water you put through it. So with this system, if you're using the rinse water more efficiently and not wasting any of it, and then once it's dirty, and then putting it back into a clean area of the tank, right? You should be able to use less rinse water in less time. But if you don't trust it, do it again. So I was training a bunch of like new Horsch guys this summer at home, and we went from barley fungicide or barley herbicide to wheat. Barley herbicide to pea fungicide. 10 minutes, 200 gallons, and the peas didn't die, so I was lucky. But no, I trusted it. So the reason why I trust it though, I used food coloring. So how I tested this, we put food coloring in the main tank, and that whole main tank was red. We did this out in Ontario last summer, and because same thing, farmers and myself are wondering, hey, does this thing actually clean out in the 10 minutes and 200 gallons like the advertising says, right? But yeah, there's no food coloring left after that automatic clean out with 200 gallons of rinse water. But if you're worried, probably the only thing I would do is manually clean out your filters if there is any chemical hung up in there. So when you look at the plumbing,
What? You could clean out a road here.
yeah, so the other thing you're doing a clean out, like the dead spots of your sprayer are what you really have to worry about, right? Where the flow stops or where the flow dead ends. So does anybody know where the dead spots are on this machine? There's one. The front fill doesn't automatically clean out, so good point. But there's a one-way flow valve on that front fill. So if the last 200 gallons of every fill are clean water, then you should have no chemical ever touching that front fill. So if you look, oops, try to find a picture of it here. Right here. So this valve right beside the monitor, okay, I see people nodding there, right? That's a dead spot on the sprayer, and that's the only one I can find. So,
But that's what you use the injector.
exactly, right? So there's a valve right there. You open this yellow valve and any residual chemical or granular that was built up inside there gets blown out under pressure. So. But compared to a Rogator on the Cleanout, I know there's a lot more dead spots on that machine in the plumbing, right?
Like on the 133, last year we had on the last pole, we had one of those return lines pinched off, so that's the only problem we had with residual chemical.
So that brings up a good point. We actually used that example in our service training this year. So the pictures you sent me, we had a guy from England here doing service training, and he had almost the identical picture, but for a different reason. But if you plug that return line, so if you see like a triangle shape, that means you get no recirculation at all. And that means when you change products, it's gonna be just water in your boom instead of charged chemical. In your case, if that return line was plugged on just the right side, that means your left side was still recirculating. And it's gonna look like a half triangle, which is kind of what we saw.
We had both, we had skips where there was no application because you turned the pump on the boom to fold it, and we just used to fold it with
Yeah.
one spray, but the chemical had to go all the way down, and also we had burned from
Yeah.
that left hanging up in there. That was just the 133, so because of that.
So the guys with 133 booms, we've changed the type of hose on the outside breakaway point, which was what the problem was. So that hose type has changed, but it's something to watch. Right on the outside breakaway, make sure that flexible rubber hose is not pinched off. Because then there's no boom recirculation. That means that return line never gets cleaned out, but it also means that half of your boom never gets charged when you change products. Anything else? Good. Okay. Well, I always show this slide because it's kind of cool, but this is the fertilizer spreader the guys in Landau are working on. So this one is 160 feet, and we got 4 of these 160 footers running this year. I hope they work. We're not going to see them in Canada till 2026, so don't hold your breath on it. But the first pictures I got back of it working were, it buried in the mud, hooked to 2 quad tracks. So they had a little baby fent hooked and trying to pull it around with that. And yeah, it's not enough horsepower. So yeah. So this is our new expansion. So this is the current sprayer site. And some of you in the room here visited the sprayer factory this winter. So you saw the expansion that's happening there. So the last time I was in Landau, it looked like this, where just the R&D shop was right here, and then the main factory was over here. So that's the R&D shop right there, main factory. So now we have this entirely new building. This is all new parts storage in here. So this is now changing to quality control. So instead of having one bay where we did quality control, now we have 4 separate bays. So the guys at the factory have promised, the machines showing up overseas markets are supposed to be like quadruple checked before they show up here. So mostly for the genAG techs, they should be showing up in better shape and less problems for you to catch for next season. All right, we'll kind of go through the monitor next, unless there's any other questions. Good. So on the monitor, It's all isobus based, so it doesn't matter if you have a Trimble, it doesn't matter if you have a John Deere Raven, these screens will all look identical. So this is hooked up to a Trimble monitor right now, but it really doesn't matter. We'll go through one that has auto select first, but we'll also show one with PWM. So we'll go through both systems. So this sprayer over here has auto select, the other one over there has PWM. So we'll switch back and forth quickly in between. These are all bar graphs, right? So this right here is a bar graph that's showing our rates. Right now my rate is entered at 12. If my rate was too low, you'd see the bar graph below the 12 over to the left here. If it's too high, your rate would be high. Your actual rate is right beside it, and this green arrow is my target rate. In this screen here, we have a bunch of different boxes we can have checked off. If we're in automatic control, this box is going to be checked off. If I'm in pressure control, if I go like this, that means it's going to hold here at 7.3 psi or whatever psi I enter, right? So we'll put it at 40. So that means my rate will change as I go through the field, but it'll always stay here at 40 psi. So as I speed up and slow down, the rate's actually going to change. But right here is where we want to leave it, in automatic. This box right here is if you're doing variable rate. So if you load a variable rate map in for variable rate fertilizer or fungicide, something like that, you would have to check this box off. My rate then goes to 0 because it's trying to pull in that variable rate. This one is kind of interesting for the auto select guys. For the guys running PWM, these two boxes don't really mean anything. But for auto select, what this does, can anybody tell me, like when the pump